Hey guys, slightly different video today. In a previous video, I showed you how I basically wired and set up the hardware for my attic bedroom lighting. Well, I wanted to expand on that a little bit to also show basically the software or Home Assistant and ESP Home site. So my Quinn LED Deca Plus design is now almost finished, and we're going to configure one of those new boards, and I'll do a dedicated video about those once I actually release them. But we're going to configure one of those to take over the function that my old Quinn LED OG dimmers were still doing for those channels, basically. And I'll also show how I've automated my light setup in Home Assistant because of how many channels the dimmers have. That's a little bit different than you do it normally. So let's get right into that. Right, so here we have my Home Assistant, and I'll be looking at my screen and sometimes into the camera, but this should be a little thing in the corner anyway. So in the attic, we have my bedroom behind the bed light. We have the bedroom slope side or creek side, I guess, and then the bedroom garage side. That's just so we know which side of the bedroom it is. And as you can see, I have some automation set up for bedroom evening profile, reading profile, and full on. And well, off is just off, and we just hit this this button here. So how does this all look? Well, if we go to configuration and then automations, or first, let's talk about why I'm not using scenes. So if we look at scenes, it's a really nice addition, and this is the way I used to do it in Domotics. Let's just call this scene 1. It asks you to add a device. And okay, let's add a attic Deca plus 24 volt. That's actually down there behind me because I'm preparing everything to deploy it tomorrow. And we see a lot of channels. This is actually channel 2, but I've renamed that to bedroom garage side. And for instance, slope side is channel 1. And well, the other channels I haven't renamed yet because, well, this one actually is going to have a function in the future. So I use the Home Assistant name overrides, and I just use a generic name in ESP Home. Anyway, the problem with scenes is that I can only define complete devices. But my dimmers have 10 channels, so if channel 1 and 2 are in the bedroom, but channel 3 is on the stairways, and channel 4 is, for instance, in the bathroom, if I'd have a scene for my bedroom, that would also change the lights in my stairway and in my bathroom, which is undesirable. And currently, there's no way to do that another way. It's either the whole device or nothing. And for instance, I have a scene here for my video recording with teleprompter. It's basically a scene I have set up so that all the lights go to the right setting automatically. And that changes garage backroom rack 24, so that's a Quinn LED module, and garage backroom desk 24, that's a different Quinn LED module. And as you can see, I have some RGB lights set here, and I have some RGB lights set over here, and some normal lights, and that works because that resets all the lights in that room. But yeah, I need a bit more granularity in being able to set lighting channels per room and not so much per device. So the way I've done that is I basically have a nested structure. On top, so at the top controlling everything, there is 3 automations. And for instance, all lights evening on is triggered 1 hour before sunset. And that one triggers all the other automations. So this does a call service, automation trigger, automation bedroom evening, and automation living room evening, for instance. So those are actually their own automations. And if I then, for instance, go to living room evening, we see that there's another, there's the device. It calls for the living room bookcase quad 24 volt. That's the one that's on top of my bookcase. And it turns out living room bookcase top strip. That's the override name I use in Home Assistant, and then it sets it to a percentage. So these automations don't have a trigger themselves. They basically just define a profile, so living room day, living room evening, living room night, because there I set the same strip to 23%, and those never trigger by themselves. They're all triggered by, well, for instance, this one, which then just calls that automation. So that's kind of a way working around the limitations of the scenes being only able to control a complete device with all its channels. It's a bit more work because I have to make all the automations, but then again, otherwise I'd have to make scenes. It's just a bit more clicking. But that's the way I automate it. So for today, as you can see, I have the Deca, hold on, let me go to integrations. The Attic Deca Plus here, that's on the ground there. And we're going to build together the Attic Deca Plus 36 volts because the 24 volt versions are hooked up to a 24 volt power supply, and those run my LED strips, which are all 24 volt. And the 36 volts run my Cobb LED downlights. Now I have those in the hallway and in the bathroom downstairs, and those are the ones we're going to configure. So going to ESP Home, we're basically going to copy the config of Attic Deca Plus 24 volt. So let's go to Edit. Let's run through this config. No, well, let's first copy it. Let's run through it after that. So just Control C. Then I'm going to make a new config, and oh wait, I always have to. I'm going to copy this first because I'm a stickler when it comes to naming, so I want to make sure it's named exactly the same. Everything we fill in here doesn't really matter. My button is missing, I think because of my scaling. Nope. Well, this always happens. Yeah, okay, fine. That's, oh, still here. Okay, abort. Abort. Oh, man. Please hold on while we deal with these technical difficulties. Right, I refreshed the page, did it again, and now we're ready to submit. Okay, fine. Yeah, I don't want to upload it right now, thanks. So we go back to the, okay, this is a known bug. If you make a new ESP Home config basically, and then try to open one of them, even if it's not the new one, it says not found. If we then refresh the page again, they're all there, no problem. Should fix that soon. Oh. Okay, so let's copy this, close, and then run through it together. We're just going to replace the default config we just made. So I basically made it that I can do a board configuration with all defaults, and I just have to change one thing, and that is the name that's mentioned here at the top, because this is a substitution, and the substitution will be called ESP Home name in the rest of the config. And if we then go to ESP Home, we see that it's $brackets ESP Home name. That basically means that the name that's going to be used in ESP Home will be what we filled in here. Now it's an ESP32, this is the board type. Oh, it's going to take my secret password, and then it's going to add a domain name because of the way I'm using DNS and stuff like that to make sure everything in ESP Home works correctly. I don't have MDNS, I set static IP leases in my DHCP server, but we'll see about that later. I have some logging enabled. Most often I disable it. Depends on which GPIO pins are used. I try to make it so that on the latest Quinn LED Deca Plus prototype, even if you reboot it, nothing flickers. But yeah. API, I enable the API and I set a password on the API interface. I enable OTA and I set a password on the OTA interface. Then I enable the web server. So I enable time synchronization with Home Assistant. And on most of my modules, I have a reboot toggle, but it kind of depends on what they're doing. If they're reading out Xiaomi sensors using Bluetooth, that wasn't stable for a long while, so I enabled this reboot timer. But in this case, we don't really need the reboot timer because this one isn't going to read any Xiaomi sensors, and then uptime is mostly fine. I still like having the time sync in there. It has a Dallas temperature sensor on board to kind of read the board temperature if you're building those into an enclosure. And then I have a switch for the onboard LED. And again, I'm using the ESP Home brackets here, ESP Home name, so that it automatically takes the right name. And that's also the name it'll come back with in Home Assistant. That's pin 2, it's inverted. I have a restart button, basically. It's a software button that I can call using the time script I showed earlier. And then I have output channels, and I just name those LED channel 1 up until 10, because we have 10 channels. And then we have lights, and those are again using my ESP Home name, -1, so that's what we'll see. That's actually what we'll see in Home Assistant. Okay, I have a transition length of 3 seconds because I like a nice fade. And as you saw here, I'm running them at 40,000 Hertz. That's generally more than enough, and it's really impossible for a human or even a camera most often to see any flickering and stuff like that. I actually did a video about that. If you'd like to see that, then just click over here. Okay, so next we enable the Dallas sensor and we call it ESP Home name minus Quinn LED temperature. So I know it's the on board of the Quinn LED temperature sensor. I use an uptime sensor just to keep that statistic. And I use a Wi-Fi signal sensor, which will all show up in Home Assistant. We'll see that later to basically visualize the Wi-Fi signal that board is receiving. So now that we have this, basically the only thing we needed to change was the 36 volt, and I took the scheduled reboot out of there. We can now hit save, but we can't hit upload because, well, we're using an ESP that hasn't been programmed before. So instead of that, we hit close, and then we go here and we say compile. Okay, that'll compile for a little bit. We'll have to wait for that. While that's compiling, this is one of the... I don't record videos in my office very much. I hope I got all the acoustics and video shot and everything okay. And it's also a little bit of a different tutorial than I normally do, because normally I work out all the steps and script it and, you know, stuff like that. And this is more real-time taking you guys along. Okay, it's compiled successfully. Great. And so now we can download the binary. Okay, there it is. And then I have to actually exit full screen mode. I open... My camera is in front of it. Didn't think that one through. Oh, wait, I haven't actually connected the ESP yet. I have a ESP 32 over here that we're going to use. And I'm going to connect that to a little micro USB cable. Oh, no, don't do that. And then I should be able to refresh. There it is. Let's browse. Add a Deca Plus 36 volt. That's the one we just made. And then we flash it. And let's hope it detects it. Okay, detecting chip. Sometimes when it's a new ESP module, we need to push the button to make it continue. Let's try if that's the problem. No. Okay, it's not able to connect for some reason. Let's oh, okay. If you get this error, you have to restart the little program, which is still not... Okay, let me move this. There we go, now I can see it. Okay, COM3. See, even for me, not everything goes right the first time. Okay, it's detected the chip type. And if you see the little blue LED blinking, that most often means you need to push the button. I think I'm pushing the wrong button. Yeah, I need to push this button. There we go. Once you see that, it's detected. So I had to hold down the boot button, but that's only the first time because there's different firmware on there which doesn't understand this boot trigger that's in this flashing program. This is ESP Home Flasher. You can just download it. I'll have a link in the description. And I've done more videos about that. But once ESP Home is on there or other Arduino compatible software, you won't really have to push that button because then it's automatically done in software. Okay, well, that was quick. It's already booting. Okay, cool. So now let's put it on the board and then continue. Okay, I'm shooting this on my cell phone real quick, so hope the quality is okay. This is a new Galaxy S20 Plus, and yeah, it's okay so far. So anyway, as you saw in the shots before, I have a 24-volt power supply here, and I have two boards. So this is the 24-volt. That's actually the QuinLED Deca Plus 24 ADIC, as you saw before. And this will be the ADIC QuinLED Deca Plus 36-volt. And we just programmed this little ESP for that. So we're just going to insert that there. Oh yeah, I really wanted to do this one-handed. Okay, well, whatever. It's in there. And yeah, so now we're going to configure this in Home Assistant. Let me enable power. Oh, there we go. I only populated 5 terminals on this board because basically I'm not going to need more in that location. And then, well, you can save on cost of material. So, yeah. The Deca is, the 24 is actually 2 channels are on. And on here, we're also going to configure 2 channels, which in the end will run some different lights. But input voltage is automatically scaled. So even though I'm using 24 volts right now, once I hook this up to 36 volts, that'll automatically work and be fine. So we can just build this test setup before we take it into production. Okay, let's get back to the computer. Okay, we're back at the computer. And if we now look in Home Assistant and ESP Home, we see that our ADIC Deca Plus 36 volt is online. Now, I secretly did a few more things, as in setting a static IP for the latest IP that basically announced itself on this SSID, and then I linked it to a DNS name, but that's because I do not run MDNS, so I have to do those things myself. Most people nowadays do run MDNS, and then that should work automatically. If we now see this little icon here, we can click it, and that actually takes us to the web server that I configured on the ESP Home module that is now on the board. And here we can see that we can toggle some channels and stuff like that. And I don't know if that will show up in video, but right now there's 2 very bright lights behind me, so let's turn those off. And we of course want to control those using Home Assistant. So let's let's close this again, go full screen. So now you have the module configured, or at least with a basic config. And if we hit show logs, we can also see that we have an ESP Home API connection. And we want to configure this in Home Assistant and then make automations to turn on and off the lights automatically. To do that, we go to configuration and then we go to integrations, and we want to set up a new integration. This is a, where is it? There we go, ESP Home integration. I think I still have it under the button. There we go. That's the name I used. And notice the domain name. I actually changed that also. I did the config initial name without it. I changed that because I want the configuration file to have this exact name. But other than that, I still, in the config, everything is still the same. But it all depends on your network and how you want to set stuff up. Okay, let's submit. Okay, it's asking me for a password. Hold on, I'll have to look that up. I'll be right back. Okay, I have it in there. This is the API password you basically set in the ESP Home configuration file. Hit submit, and it asks you an area. I don't really use areas yet, but I do put modules in certain areas. So, okay. And now you can see it added it here. So we have ESP Home Deca Plus 36 volt, and everything we configured in ESP Home. So our 10 dimming channels, the onboard LED, the Wi-Fi signal, you can get a nice graph of that here, and the onboard temperature sensor is also working. Okay, and the restart button because I still have that in there, and well, the uptime sensor, which will count up. as long as it's up. So that, as you can see, basically if you have that ESP home configuration, and as I said, I just use the default I created once, and I use those on all my modules. You just paste it in there, change the name, and then link it to Home Assistant using the integration. Done. You do not need to do any other Home Assistant or manually jumble files, write code, anything like that. It's all done automatically. Okay, so what I do want to set up is the name overrides, because I know I'm going to use channel 1 for the hallway downlights. Okay, and then I'm going to be using channel 2 for the bathroom downlights. Actually, no, I do it per room. I was going to say I can do downlights and then bathroom, but I mostly go by room and then type of light. Okay, update. And now, as you can see here, I can turn these on and off. I think you can see that in the background. Let's turn that one off. And then it automatically becomes a dimmer. So now if I set in a new dim level, it will fade up or down from that point to the new set point within 3 seconds. And it automatically makes a nice smooth dim and stuff like that. Okay, let's turn that off again. So now if I want to make some automations for that and have it function the way like my home does basically, I go to configuration and I use automations again because now I have 2 channels. One is in the bathroom and one is in the hallway. So I can't really use scenes. So, okay. As you can see, I have a standard naming for that. So this is bedroom evening. Let's skip. Let's make a hallway evening. And basically, I'll use this for the hallway upstairs where this is going. But I also have downlights downstairs, and those are connected to different controllers. But I'll still add those to the same automation once those are on the new boards also. Okay, well, we have a device, and that will be our Attic Deca Plus. Then we want to have our, let's see, hallway downlights turned on. No, wait, I'm doing it wrong. This is a trigger. We're not going to have a trigger in this one. Sorry. Device, exactly. Attic Deca Plus 36 volt. And then we want to have our, let's see where it is. Hallway, turn on hallway downlights, okay? And we want to turn those on to 50% because they're 12 watt each, and even at the default setting we use them at during the night, 50% is plenty. Okay, let's save that. And now I have this automation. I can execute it. And yeah, you probably can't see that in the background, but it turned on. But we need one to be able to turn it off. And then I'm not going to make all of them because I normally use 3. Oh, well, this is going to be a long video anyway. So I also use a night profile, which is basically the same lights, no trigger. I'm just going to run through this real quick. This will be the hallway downlights. Turn on, brightness %, and I turn those on to 15%. And then I make another one, and that will be day. And basically I use the day profile for turning everything off. So I go to the same one, and I set it to hallway turn. Oh wait, no, actually there is a dedicated turn off. Turn off hallway downlights. Okay. So now I have 3 hallways, and yes, this is a lot of work, but once those for downstairs and maybe some other lights you use in the same room or area, I can just add those to these 3 profiles. And what I do now is I have my all lights day off, which actually has my trigger based on sunlight, and I just add an action, call service. The service will be automation trigger. And then the automation I want to trigger is, this was the day, right? I always forget. Yeah, so this is the day, and the day we just configured to turn everything off. So I just add it to this automation, and then it'll do the rest for the whole house. That's basically how I do my lighting right now. There's not a lot of motion detection in there or other stuff. I will be expanding on this in the future, but not right now. And we've been using it for this for a few years now. That's actually, lights are just on when they need to be on and off, or in a dim state when they need to be off. And I forgot again. So this is evening. So hallway evening. Okay. And then I just need to fix, let's see, night dimly lit. Yes. Add action. Call service. So basically, you only have to do this once per room, and then it can control multiple channels on multiple devices. It doesn't really matter anymore if they're all connected to the same dimmer, or 5 different dimmers, or spread out over multiple channels on multiple dimmers. It's just all the same. Okay, well, that was it. I know this is a very long video, but in reality, in practice, this doesn't take too long, especially if the lights you're connecting are already in a room you've configured before, like a bedroom or hallway. You can just add them to the hallway evening, which is my on profile. You just add the action for another channel. So that's basically how I have my lighting set up in Home Assistant, and how I use my Quinn LEDs, which all have lots of channels. So this, for instance, has bathroom downlights and hallway downlights, and the attic Deca Plus has the garage side and slope side, and the attic stairs right side. So that's 2 completely different rooms. And then this one, the quad, is a single one that's behind the bed. It only has the bedroom behind bed command. But because I use the automations, sorry if I'm clicking too fast. If I look at bedroom evening, it just calls the channels on the quad and on the plus. So it doesn't really matter what is connected to what. You just make sure to trigger that automation, and that can be automatic, as I do with sunrise and timing. It can be a button somewhere, even if it's a Zigbee button or whatever. It can be on your phone. It can be using presence detection. Doesn't really matter. Everything's linked together to Home Assistant, and then you can use all the channels individually for whatever you want. Okay. So for instance, I have my scene overview here I often use, and I can set all the lights to the evening profile, or when I go to bed earlier or later, I can say, okay, wait, for the living room, I want to execute the evening profile because I'm up later, or once I'm in bed earlier or whatever, I want to execute the night profile because that's what we have active when we go to sleep. And yeah. So this is a more behind the scenes, not so much the hardware side, but the Home Assistant and ESP Home side. I think I'm going to cut off this video here. If you'd like a video of me actually replacing the boards, let me know and I'll film that too. I have 3 locations to do. I have 4 of the new dimmers made, which I think, as I said, are now production ready. So I'll be working on the web pages and fixing up the design and then releasing it for you all. This is a very expensive board because it has lots of features. It's really big physically. It has the fuse protection, all kinds of stuff on there. Basically, the ultimate board I wanted to have. So I built it, and if you guys want one too, I'll make sure that's available DIY, and I'm looking into maybe pre-assembled for the SMD components that are on the back, or even a complete board later on, because it's so expensive to, well, order all the components individually. Even just the PCBs will set you back like $60 or something like that. You'll get 12, but most people aren't me and don't need 12. So yeah. Thank you for watching. As always, there is our Discord server. We're about 1,500 people strong now, with everything about LEDs and IP cameras and my boards and stuff like that. Maybe join there. And if you like this video, give it a like. Maybe subscribe for more future content. Thank you for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye-bye.